I first started talking about long-term care with clients, right? 67, 68 years old that was an old person.
Right.
You know, all right. Today, that longevity threat and medical technology that keeps you alive longer and longer for years and years to come, that costs thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, is all part of the planning that people don't do.
And we've seen that in our own family, right?
Right.
There have been family members who've had sicknesses and illnesses that 70 years ago would have killed them. 30 years ago would have killed them and they would have died early, but instead they live another 14 or 15 years. But oftentimes that 14 or 15 years isn't really that awesome, right? And you know, Carson, you're a young guy. You're a long ways away from that. But as we sit here and talk about this asset-based long-term care and just the different ways that people can plan for longevity or dying early, asset-based long-term care is a pretty great answer.
Yeah, it really is. You know, the asset-based long-term care is just one of those great advancements in the industry that, you know, not everyone knows about. And it's something that, you know, it's at least worth the conversation to have with someone.
Yeah.
Because the kind of consequences of not having that conversation, like we've touched on, are so grave that, you know, the asset-based long-term care, like Bernie said, gets to accomplish 3-4 goals at one time.
And when you have something like that, it's like you have it in different tiers, or some, I've heard people call it buckets. So you can have that now bucket, and you can use that money that it's in there. It's not just stuck in limbo until you need to pay off nursing homes or anything like that, right?
Yeah. You know, a real common source of planning that we find that people do, or not a way of thinking, people look at traditional long-term care, and like Tyler and Carson have alluded to here, they go, well, you know what, I got a 50% chance of going into a nursing home, but I also have a 50% chance of not going, and if I do traditional planning, what's going to happen when I live another 20 years, that's going to be $70, $80, $100,000 that's eliminated from my legacy. I'll just roll the dice.
Yeah.
And
the biggest problem with that thought process is that people go, well, I have this money, I'll earn interest on it, and I'll put it somewhere where I can use it for long-term care on a rainy day. But the problem is that the cost of inflation associated with long-term care is way higher than the interest rates that people are able to earn right now. So that chunk of money that they have sitting aside that they're saying, well, this is my long-term care money, it can't even keep up with the escalating cost of long-term care, which is why people need to understand how to leverage their money to create benefits that do stay up with the inflationary cost of long-term care. And the sooner they do that, the better, because otherwise they're just sticking their head in the sand. If there's this big potential cost out there, learning about the tools that we can use to isolate that so that we can live the rest of our life happy, because I don't want people walking around going, what if I go in a long-term care facility? What if I go in a long-term care facility? Something bad's going to happen to me. It's right around the corner. We don't want that shadow over people. But if people can free themselves up by efficient planning to know that cost of long-term care is covered if the worst thing were to happen, great. Then they can live the rest of their life walking around and going, that's covered. And you know what? Even if I don't need it, it's going to go to my family, and it's going to be something that we can use or I can use for something else. You know, like even if the government came out, I don't think they're going to do this, but even if they came out and said, hey, we're going to pay for all the long-term care in the entire country, we hear that sometimes, right? Then if they did that, the types of plans we're talking about would allow people to go in and go, well, I can use this money for something else. That level of flexibility is king when we're talking about building a successful lifetime financial plan and a successful estate plan for our families.
Well, absolutely, and that's what you ended with there was, hey, if you lose out and you don't need that 50% chance and you stay out, well, that money's still going to go to whoever your beneficiary.
Absolutely.
Whoever you want it to be. If you've got kids, it goes to your kids, your family, whoever, the pet shelter that you love, whatever. Cool. You know that money is going somewhere, so it's going to use, and it's not just like, oh, well, you lost that flip of the coin.
You're listening to Planning for the Future with our guest, the team from the Wrezinski Advisory Group. For a free copy of Tyler's book, call 800-999-2371.
So, Carson, you are the youngest one of the group. How did you get in with this crew?
So I got to know this crew. My mom has worked in their office for almost 7-8 years now. And I was kind of brought in high school, just help Bernie and Tyler with miscellaneous things.
You interned, right, for a little while?
Yeah. I interned for a little bit, just helping them with some of our workshop stuff, and really just got to know these guys. And I graduated college, and they were looking to add somebody on, and Tyler and I had a conversation, and I couldn't have been more excited sitting here a few years later about the choice that I made, kind of leaving college to join this firm. And the family aspect of it is huge, and I really like our team approach too, because if someone doesn't have the answer, I always know that Tyler will have an answer, Bernie will have an answer for me.
Yeah, there's like 70 years of experience sitting in this room right now. Almost all of it's yours, Bernie. Okay.
Yeah.
But I've been doing this 16 years or so now, and that you mentioned that team approach, Carson, which is one of the true joys of what we do in our office, is the pleasure of being able to work together and work with our clients. And like Carson said, if he runs into something that he hasn't run into before, trotting on down the hallway or picking up the phone and calling one of us is a huge asset for a younger guy. And we love the energy of having a younger guy who's so passionate about the business and about helping people and just getting started with his career. Although you've been working with us for several years now, he's getting all kinds of designations and doing all this awesome education stuff, and it's such an asset for our office.
And it's nice, like we talked a little bit before the show, is it helps you get along with the whole family. Like someone that you signed on with, Bernie. As time goes on now, these two are taking care of their kids and getting all their ducks in a row, and their financial planning there. And they've seen the success what you've done, so why not just keep moving on, and that gives you that inside customer base as well.
This is actually one of the things I'm very proud about in our office. We have a lot of clients who've been clients for a really long time, 20, 30 years. And we oftentimes have the privilege of being introduced to their children and to their grandchildren. And actually, industry-wide, almost no children stay with the advisor that their parent had once their parent passes away.
Really?
Almost everybody makes a change. It's something like 5 or 10% of children who change their advisor as soon as their parent passes away. And our office actually keeps over half of the clients that we have into the second generation. And so one of the great things that we've been able to do is we've been able to build a rapport, not just with the clients that we have, but because of the expertise that we have and because of the amount of care we put into the relationships we have with our clients, their kids get to see that something's different.
Yeah, and what's really different is this. When I first got into the industry years ago, the industry focused on product. All right, I would go to someone, it didn't matter what we were talking about, they needed this product, and that's what we sold, is we sold a product.
You were going to door to door and working on your
yeah,
truck,
years
basically.
ago, yeah. And so we sold a product, and then over a period of years, what happened is a process evolved out of the product situation that we were in. And now, and one of the reasons that we have so much multi-generational success and with relationships within families is because of the process that we use that goes through a very detailed approach of helping them determine what tools work best for that family.
The process is the key part there, because I think people feel terminally unique. Most people are out there trying to plan for long-term care. They're trying to plan for their retirement. They feel like they're alone. It's them versus the world, and nobody else can really understand what they're going through. And while people's individual lives are unique, there's only so many problems people run into, or so many things that a person has to overcome. We all have to overcome the same problems, is kind of what I'm saying. Those problems are, how do we get retirement income? How do we plan for long-term care so it doesn't destroy our estate? How do we do estate planning so that our kids can efficiently get what we leave behind? How do we pay less in taxes and have more income and more wealth? And one of the things that our process has allowed people to do is to understand how all those different goals play together, so that even though they are a unique person, they can learn lessons from the overarching problems that we as human beings have living in this country, and how to solve them in a unique way that fits their puzzle rather than some kind of cookie cutter thing or some catch-all type of planning.
You know what? I'm going to have a little bit of fun right now, but you know what?
We'll see. We'll see if
You
it's
know what
fun.
initiated this thought process? Your mom, whether you know it or not, and I'm pretty sure you do because she would be very quick to tell you about her experiences as a synchronized swimmer.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've heard about the synchronized swimming that Mom does. You can't get her in a pool with a glass of wine without hearing about the synchronized swimming. So go ahead.
So I thought if we could take that concept of synchronized swimming and use it to synchronize people's retirement planning so that all of the pieces worked together, that would be a good concept.
But do you need a shower cap when you do that?
Shower cap and a swimsuit. Yeah, right?
The nose plugs, you got to have the nose plugs, right?
I'm going to be so honest. I was so confused with where he was going when he started that analogy. I was really deeply concerned.
And I've never used that one before.
No, you haven't.
But that synchronization is really key because if people might have done all this good financial planning. They started out at 30 years old and they wanted to have $3 million by the time they were 55, and they've done it, right? Estate planning, they might have done that. Said, well, now I've accumulated some wealth. What am I going to do to avoid the government being my biggest financial partner? So they do this good estate planning, right? Good health insurance planning, but they fail to take into consideration a catastrophe that they have a 50% chance of experiencing.
We keep throwing around this 50% number, and that's wrong.
Yeah, it's
true. It's much higher than that because there's two people in the family, and there's a really, really good chance that at least one person will experience that catastrophic.
If you're a woman and you live to be in your 80s, it's about a 70 or an 80%
you're going
chance.
in.
You're going in.
It's just a matter of how long and how bad.
Yeah.
Right? And so we keep throwing that number around, but in reality, one of the things I find is people go into retirement and they drastically overestimate their healthcare costs. Like I hear people all the time who are in their late 50s and 60s, and they're like, I've got to have all this big chunk of money saved up for healthcare. But they're thinking about, like, what if I needed a surgery or I got cancer or a heart attack? Well, Medicare is actually really good insurance, and nowadays people don't really go broke in retirement from that stuff because there's Medicare and there's all this other stuff that limits their exposure. But the area that people underestimate is their healthcare cost at the end of their life. Almost all of us spend the vast majority of the total dollars we will spend on healthcare in the last 5 years of our life because of the different debilitating conditions and the level of care that are required. And I guess the question I always have for folks is, do you want to do that in a way that maintains your dignity? Do you want to do that in a way where you have choices? Or do you want to do that in a way where you have no dignity? The choice is, did I say no diggity? We have no diggity.
He's
no
a
doubt.
rapper.
Yeah, there's a rap song called No Diggity. Anyway, where you have no dignity, no choices, and where you're going to lose all your money anyway. Or do you want to do it in such a way where you get to keep your money and your stuff, you get to pass on money to your family, because nobody wants to give their money to a nursing home administrator. Nobody wants to leave all that to some giant corporation that runs a chain of nursing homes. And people don't have to. But they just miss out on the opportunities because, I don't know, we're fearful. Maybe sometimes we're lazy. Maybe we procrastinate. I don't know how often I've said, oh, hey, I need to do this, that, or the other, and just walk by and then realized a month went by and I hadn't circled back around to it.
Right. And there's so much of that money out there that's tax-free.
Sure, yeah.
Which brings us to your book, Tyler, Tax-Free Money for Long-Term Care. And there's just lots of little, great techniques inside that book that, talk about how, you can create that tax-free money. Everybody loves tax-free, right?
Yeah. I don't know anybody who doesn't.
Right. Free 99 is the best price.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you're right about that. And that's one of the reasons that we wrote that book and that I wrote that book is the accumulated experience that we've had. And we've seen families really hurt, really lose a lot of money, and really experience a lot of pain and frustration because of long-term care stays, because they needed home health care and couldn't afford it. And we really want to see people avoid that. And for the most part, it's a very confusing thing for a lot of people. How is all this stuff going to work? Am I making the right decision? And so one of the reasons we wrote this book is I just wanted to sit down and help people understand, with the 60 or 70 years of experience that we have in planning for this, how they can use the government programs that do exist to their advantage rather than to their disadvantage. How they can take advantage of the fact that the government now allows people to plan for tax-free long-term care dollars, which is incredibly important because